Alright, so I have a 99 Super Duty V10, and this was a former township plow truck, so as you might imagine there was lots of salt under this truck. Common problem with a lot of these V10s. That's all that's left of my oil dipstick tube, and looked around the internet for lots and lots of solutions, including putting tubes on and everything else. The real correct thing to do to these is to take off the exhaust manifold and the oil filter housing and get in and pull out what's left of the stick. Well, in the case of this truck, it was rusted off right at the block, so there wasn't much we could do. Certainly couldn't get the tailpiece out at all. Tried a lot of different things, including putting things down in with hooks and everything else to try and get our old tailpiece out. Very unsuccessfully. Tried one route of even feeding a wire down through. Take a look at our wire. I'd even fed this wire down through and put a knot in and fed this all the way out the oil pan and tried to pull a tube out with it unsuccessfully. So the question is, what are we left to do? Well, I thought I'd share what we did. I have the new stick, and by the way, I didn't want to get into the process of taking off the exhaust manifold because it's so rusted I'd break every bolt. It's not leaking, so I didn't want to get into a bigger project. And anyway, we took out the fender liner. You can see I have the new tube in. It's routed a little bit differently. What I realized is that the taper tube on the new tube was going to fit inside what was left of the old one. So fed it down through. See if we can get underneath. Try and get a picture under here. If we can. That's a little dark. Hold on. So I'm looking up now where our tube comes down, and you can see as I fed it down in here that it fits inside what was left of the old piece. And what we did was use some epoxy and epoxied it in to seal it up. So what we're left with is a tube with a little different routing, but it's also, of course, a little bit longer than it needed to be. Because it is zip tied up, it is longer, so we're left with, well, what do you do about a dipstick tube? So what I did was change the oil and filter, so I know it's got the correct amount of oil in it. And simple coat hanger. Now you see I have some black marks on here with magic marker. So what I did was we fed it in, rubber stopper at the top. Eventually I'll make a nicer handle for this. This is just kind of temporary. But she works just fine. In she goes. Got my rubber stopper. Fits very well. Can check my oil. Of course, this oil is very clean, so it doesn't show up very well on the stick, but it is right at the top mark. And then I use my old stick. I use my old stick to line it up on the hash marks from the holes to know what my oil was. So I've got myself a homemade dipstick tube that now I can check the oil on the truck. I've got a nice solid dipstick tube again, and it was a heck of a lot easier than taking half this engine apart just to try and get that tailpiece out. You know what they say about temporary solutions. There's nothing more permanent than a temporary solution, but it's good and solid. All I do is bend this tube up a little bit to make room for the air cleaner, and we should be back in business. I'm ready to button this truck up and get it back on the road.